Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 861B, and today's date is January 7th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The U.S. Government is Planning the Next Event That Will Shock the People Around the World into War. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, as this economy falls apart, the U.S. government, and we know that Congress, the Obama administration, they're not working for the people. I mean, for those people who think that they're still working for the people and they care about the people, they really don't. They're in it for themselves. The system is collapsing. They're taking money from corporations, from central banks. They're taking money from foreign governments, and they're basically lining their pockets. And the people, they really don't care about. I mean, it might seem like they care about it, but care about the people, but they really don't. The American government right now is so corrupt, it's just unbelievable. And here's a couple items to show that the government is corrupt. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission has conspired with big banks to manipulate commodity prices for decades. The government-sponsored rating agencies committed massive fraud. The Treasury Department allowed banks to cook their books. Regulators knew and allowed the use of debt-hiding accounting tricks by the big banks. The SEC has been shredding Wall Street documents for decades to help the big banks cover up their fraud. The Secretary of Treasury, Tim Geithner, when he was the Secretary of Treasury, was complicit in Lehman's accounting fraud. The former chief accountant for the SEC says that Bernanke and Paulson broke the law and should be prosecuted. The government knew about mortgage fraud for a very long time. The FBI warned of an epidemic of mortgage fraud in 2004. However, the FBI, Department of Justice, and other government agencies then stood down and did absolutely nothing. Obama and Congress promised to help the struggling homeowners. They passed numerous bills that they claim would rescue the little guy, but every single one of these bills actually bails out the banks and doesn't help the homeowner one bit. We see that the high-level Federal Reserve official says quantitative easing is the greatest backdoor Wall Street bailout of all time. Bailout funds were not used to help Main Street or the little guy. Instead, the government threw money at several billionaires and tens of multimillionaires, as well as hedge funds, giant corporations, and banks. Congress, when they voted for Obamacare, went right out and exempted themselves from the health care rules. Now, is that a government for the people? They voted something for the people and said, we don't want this. I mean, this is what dictators do. This is what those sitting in high levels of office who feel that they're above the people do. So this is not a representative of the people. It's not a representative of the everyday person. Because if it was, they wouldn't have exempted themselves from Obamacare. Because if it was that good, they'd be taking it. State lawmakers are routinely wined and dined by corporate lobbyists who literally tell them what laws to pass. And there's so many other things to show that the government is completely corrupt. Basically, at this time, since the government is not working for the people, it is time for the government to step down. It is time to get rid of the central bank. It is time for the people to take back their country, to reestablish the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, to say enough is enough. Now, am I saying go out there with weapons to take back the government? No. We as a peaceful, understanding people, we are telling the government that it's time for a change. And we need the nation to come together and say it is time for a change. Because if we don't do it, who else is going to do it? And you have to remember, our founding fathers, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, who said that they've given us this gift for 100 years. Actually, it lasted a lot longer than that, but they thought it was going to be about 100 years, where we would have to fight for our freedom once again. because they knew the government was going to be corrupt. And what we're seeing right now is the government has gotten so corrupt, so taken over by other entities, that there's no way out of this but to remove the entire government and start over once again. This is actually what the founding fathers did. They started everything all over. They took control. They wanted to do it peacefully, but those in power, they never want it to be peaceful. They never want to give up their control. They never want to give up their power. And they will fight to the very end. I mean, it's throughout history that this always happens. And we can see at this point that Obama, who knows that the people are not for gun control, Gallup has done many polls showing that this is not on the first part of people's lists that we want gun control. But we know that the central bankers, corporate interests, those in control, they need to control the people. And they knew that they just have to go ahead and do it. They knew Congress was never going to push any type of law through, basically banning weapons, trying to take away weapons. And this is why Obama is working his way around all this. He gave a lot of fake statistics, gave a lot of fake and false information during his speech. Everyone's calling him out on it. And what we're seeing right now is there's an opportunity for him, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it seems like this is completely set up and ready to go in Oregon, where he can use this to his advantage. And we can see at this point, those people there are making a stand. They're doing it peacefully. They don't want violence. They want to talk. They want to express their grievances, which, by the way, the Bill of Rights allows us to do. The Constitution allows us to do. And the government, they don't want to talk. They don't want to speak to people. They want to do whatever they have to do, and that's it. And we can see at this point, there's a lot of rumors floating around that there's special op teams in the area posing as militiamen, agent provocateurs, pretending to be one of them. And what I'm very nervous about, and I think everyone should be nervous about, is that they can use this opportunity to basically declare an emergency once an incident occurs. And we know the government knows what to do and likes to control the situation with shootout. It makes good TV. It shows that people are, crazy militiamen, which they're not. They're peaceful individuals trying to help a family, trying to preserve our way of life. And this is what the founding fathers did, by the way. Remember, during the revolution, it wasn't the entire country that was all in on this. It was only, 10 to 15% of the people that were in on restoring and creating a new government separate and apart from England. And we're seeing the same thing happen right now, but we know the government is not going to let that go. And they're going to try to push some type of an event. And with this event, which I'm very nervous about, Obama can declare a state of emergency, declare martial law, suspend what's left of the Constitution. A lot of people say it's already gone at this point, but we as the people, we support the Constitution, and I'm not saying or giving up any of my rights, even though the government tells me that, because that's not what it's all about. It's about we the people. We tell them what our rights are, what the Constitution is. They don't dictate it to us. And we need to watch this situation very, very carefully as time goes on, and we can see where this might be going, and we should all be a little nervous at this time of how the government is going to react to this situation. Now, yesterday, we talked about North Korea and how there was an earthquake, and I'm talking about everyone like the UN, the United States, South Korea, and NATO were all out there saying, oh, this is a violation of the UN Security Council of nuclear weapons, and this cannot be allowed, and everyone was screaming and yelling about all of this. And it's funny because they had absolutely no proof whatsoever that it was any type of nuclear explosion. And Russia was saying, well, wait a minute, shouldn't we get proof first to see what actually happened in this area before we go out and we start, placing sanctions? But remember, the U.S. government, central bankers, NATO, they're in the business of provoking. They're in the business of propaganda. And right now, a Japanese monitoring post says that they haven't come up with any radiation in the wake of the test so far, which means there's no data at all to base conclusions on. Now, this may change in a couple days from now, but at this point, there is absolutely nothing. There's no proof whatsoever that it was any type of nuclear explosion. All we know is that there was an earthquake in this area. But of course, this is not stopping South Korea. They're going to restart their propaganda. They're setting up their loudspeakers on the border of North Korea. And they've put their military on state of full readiness. And they're ready for North Korea, for any type of provocation. I mean, they're really going out there to provoke North Korea into doing something. U.S. right now is voting on sanctions, and they're considering returning strategic arms to South Korea. They're in talks right now over possible redeployment of strategic nuclear arsenals and missile defense systems to the Korean Peninsula. Now, why do you think they're doing this? This was withdrawn from the region back in the 90s. Why do they want nuclear missiles in this region? Do you think they're pointing them to North Korea? Well, maybe one or two, but the others will be pointing towards China. And of course, China came out and said, well, wait a minute. That is a direct threat to China's security. And we can see at this point, the entire propaganda of North Korea exploding a nuclear weapon was just that. Propaganda for the United States, South Korea, to bring in weapons, to reset up the propaganda, the loudspeakers, to provoke North Korea, to have weapons pointing towards China. Now, the U.S. may send sniffer jets to Korea to look into the bomb test. Do you really think they're sending sniffer jets, or do you think they're sending spy planes? I'm going to say they're going to be sending spy planes to that area. Now, John Kerry was out there, and he said, and he made this clear in a phone call with the Chinese foreign minister, Wang Yi, that China's approach to North Korea has failed, and it was time to end business as usual with North Korea. They waited for China to work its magic with North Korea, and now the U.S. is taking over. And they cannot continue the way this is at this point. The U.S. needs to take action. So you can see where this is going at this point. Does this mean they're going to start World War III right now? No, they're trying to provoke North Korea. They're trying to provoke China, just like they're doing it with Russia. Remember, the goal is always the same. They're just starting a new tactic. See what they're doing here? And we can see that by the U.S. continually provoking North Korea, Russia, China, they're hoping they can start some type of incident to kick off the war. Now, out in Yemen, we understand that Saudi Arabia, which is being controlled by the United States, they are bombing civilians. They bombed a center for the blind, and there's a UN human rights representative inside of Yemen looking into the situation. The puppet government that is in Yemen says that we don't want this human rights representative in the country because the things that they're saying, that Saudi Arabia is responsible for these bombings, and The U.S. is also responsible because they're using cluster bombs, which were produced by the U.S. We don't want this type of representative in here. So we can see already they're trying to cover up what's really going on. Saudi Arabia bombed the Iranian embassy in Yemen. Now, why do you think they did this? They did this on purpose to provoke Iran. This whole thing, this whole new tactic, is to provoke tensions in the Middle East, to provoke Iran, to get them to do something, to derail the Syria talks. So now we have provocation with North Korea, with Iran, and China and Russia all at the same time. They're doing whatever they possibly can to start this war. Because what's happening? Well, the economy is accelerating. It is collapsing. And they need this war to cover it up. Now, just because it's covered up doesn't mean the collapse is called off. The collapse will continue, but they can blame another group or country. We already see the United States, Britain, Egypt, Italy preparing to go into Libya. We see that there was some type of explosion where it killed, 70 people. Of course, it's being blamed on the Islamic State. This is to make it seem like there's terror all throughout Libya, and they need help. And basically, they're urging the government in Tripoli to form a national unity government. They're saying that Libya cannot afford to remain divided. We need to come together and let the puppet government rule. So they're getting prepared to go into Libya. This is going to be a major offensive coming up most likely in the first part of 2016. There is now rumors that the Islamic State can now build surface-to-air missiles to down planes. Now, where are they getting the parts to build this? Oh, that's right, the United States. The United States has been giving them parts to build the surface-to-air missiles. Why are they doing this? Well, it will help with Russia, who's flying around in Syria. It will help with Iraq, that is actually destroying and fighting against the Islamic State. And we can see right now they're going to be using these surface-to-air missiles to down a lot of these jets. And we can see that everything is being built up right now because Leon Panetta, former CI director and Secretary of Defense, he is out there saying that ISIS has the potential to conduct a Paris-type attack in America, or an attack that is much, much worse. He said, mark my words, I think ISIS has the potential to conduct a Paris-type attack in this country. And what they're leading up to right now, and they're trying to convince everyone, is that there will be some type of an attack here in the United States. Now, it's not going to be from ISIS. Of course, they're going to try to make it seem like it's from ISIS, but this is going to be something that was done by the government. Remember, everything is collapsing. It's accelerating. They're running out of time. And this next event, that's not just going to happen here in America. It's going to happen in many different areas because they need to shock the private Western Central Bank world. They need to shock the people of these countries into going into war. And this shock is going to be so horrific. People are not going to understand what is going on. It's going to be complete mayhem across this country. Now, this is not to scare you. This is not to say, oh my God, I'm a fearmonger. This is our government planning to do this. This is our government trying to get themselves out of an economy that is collapsing. This is our government telling us that this is what's coming. Because they need to cover this up. And a small little shootout is not going to do it. They need something bigger. They need something larger. We are already hearing the calls for the utility companies here in the United States to tighten security because Ukraine got cyber attacked from Russia. that we can expect some type of an attack here in the United States. All of this is being set up at this point to scare everyone, to scare the people, because it's the only way the government can operate. They need to scare everyone into doing things you normally wouldn't do. You wouldn't want to go to war for paper and ink because we have too much debt, because the economy is collapsing. No. They know this. You will go to war if they tell you we're being attacked. That they were attacking not just one area. And that could be the Islamic State, it could be Russia, it could be China, it could be North Korea. That they hit us in many different cities. They hit us and knocked out the power grid in different locations. They were hitting us with a chemical, biological type of weapon. This is what they're planning. This is their next big event. This is what they're going to try to use to bring about war and to get the people to fight for them. And this is when we say no. We know what you did. We're calling you out on this. We know this was a false flag. We know what you're trying to do. And all the alternative media, all the people need to scream as loud as they possibly can, not just here in America, in Canada, throughout Europe, UK, Australia. Everyone needs to come and say, no, we are not fighting for the central bankers. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.